I'm Art Bell, and coming up in a moment, Zecharia Sitchin. He only has a limited time with us, and so we're going to try and cover as much as we can, as quickly as we can. All right, no delay. Now to New York, and here he is, Zecharia Sitchin. He should need no introduction. Those of you who have for years read this genre of material should know him. The 12th Planet, Stairway to Heaven, Genesis Revisited, The Lost Realms, When Time Began, The Earth Chronicles, Genesis Revisited, just unfolding now, not a rehash of current events, but a factual account of divine encounters. That's what this book is going to be about. Moving also into all kinds of metaphysical areas, even touching on the current rage of angels. And here he is from New York, Zecharia Sitchin. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. It is a great honor to have you on, and for about 2 years now, people have been asking me to get you on. So here you are. I'm not going to waste any time. I'd like to begin at the beginning, if we could. The 12th planet. Is it Dr. Sitchin?
Well, Mr. would do, Zecharia would do.
What is, in a nutshell, if you can do it, the theory of the 12th planet? What is the 12th planet?
Well, you just said that not to waste time, you want to start at the beginning. And this is really starting at the beginning. Because according to ancient texts that have come to us from Mesopotamia, today's Iraq, going back almost 6,000 years, they provided us with a cosmogony dealing with how the solar system came into being, and tell us that soon after the solar system, where we are, our part of the universe, as soon as it came into being about 4 billion or so years ago, an invader from space, a planet ejected from its own solar system somewhere else, was passing by, was drawn into the center of our solar system, had a collision with another planet that existed at that time between Mars and Jupiter. In that collision, half of that other planet was smashed into bits and pieces, became mostly the asteroid belt that still orbits between Mars and Jupiter. Part of it became a comet that visits us from time to time, and some of those comets are in the news. And the other half of the destroyed planet was shunted or thrust into a new orbit and became our planet Earth. That invader, which was called in the ancient text by the Sumerians Nibiru, which meant planet of the crossing, later renamed by the Babylonians in honor of their national god Marduk, became also a member of the solar system with a vast elliptical orbit that lasts about 3,600 years, 3,600 of our years,
Yes.
Because to that planet and whoever might be on it, one orbit is just 1 year. And that explains such other problems as the so-called immortality of the gods from Greek mythology, etc. So that planet became a member, and according to the Sumerians, the 12th member of the solar system, because they counted the sun. They said this is the family of the sun. They included the moon as a member in its own right for reasons that are given in those ancient texts, and 10 planets, the 9 we know about, and one more, the 12th member. So from our astronomical viewpoint, it would be a 10th planet. It is the planet which is the 12th member. So the publisher of my first book, and by the way, it was 20 years ago, condensed this title, The Planet Which is the 12th Member, and made it the 12th planet. So this is the story of the 12th planet, and it goes back to the very beginnings of our own solar system, of the Earth and the heavens as we know them. And this is really the source of the biblical tale and the beginning of the book Genesis.
When do you believe this 12th planet will return?
Well, first of all, let me say I believe that it will return because this would be a fulfillment of all the prophecies in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, and in the writings, the Holy Scriptures of other nations in antiquity.
What is the best estimate of its return time?
Well, can we go to the next question?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
There is a comet that has been discovered by two amateur astronomers,
Right.
now named Hale-Bopp. First thought to be as big as 1,000 miles across, now thought to be at least 100 miles across, with a dust cloud about it, 2.5 million kilometers wide. It's big, very, very big, out beyond the orbit of Jupiter. They have calculated its return time, very interestingly, at about 3,600 years. Is there any correlation?
Probably, but let me explain why. The orbit of Nibiru, as the Sumerians called it, that other planet, which is given by them mathematically as 3,600 years, because these orbits shift, even Halley's Comet, which has a short period orbit of some 75 years, is sometimes 75, sometimes 77, because as the celestial bodies travel in our solar system and are affected by other planets, the orbital period changes slightly. So 3,600 is a mathematical number that can shift a little either way. It has a retrograde orbit. Now all the members, mostly, virtually all the members of our solar system, due to the way they were created, orbiting from some kind of nuclear or nebulous cloud around the sun and then coalescing, orbit in what we call a counterclockwise direction. Nibiru orbits in a clockwise, and thus it's called retrograde direction,
Right.
and that's the collision, because when one planet, the older one, orbited one way, Nibiru came in another way, there was a collision. So first of all, this is a retrograde orbit. Second, according to the biblical prophecies, and I deal with them especially in my book Genesis Revisited, which you so kindly mentioned, it will appear, or at least according to expectations in biblical times, it would appear when it does return in the constellation of Sagittarius.
Which is where Hale-Bopp is.
Right. Okay. Now, and then it comes into our into the center of the solar system at an angle, at a maybe steep angle. So here we have this so-called comet. I say so-called because nobody's really sure what it is.
You're right.
That was first discovered by the two amateur astronomers, which, by the way, says a lot for so-called amateurs, who have discovered more than the regular astronomers.
It is true.
That it appeared beyond almost where Neptune is, and it was already extremely bright. Now, as you obviously know and your listeners know, the comets attain the head or the coma and the tail and become visible only when they near the sun.
Yes.
Because then it's then when they begin, the material begins to evaporate, etc. Now, out there, it is not evaporating yet, and already it is extremely bright, tens and even hundreds of times more bright than, for example, Halley's Comet was.
Yes.
Secondly, it has a retrograde orbit.
But let me stop you for 1 second and ask you, if it must be near the sun for this brightness to be apparent because of the evaporation of the snowball or whatever it is that
Right.
think comets have, then where is the energy coming from now to create this brightness?
Well, okay, that's one of the enigmas. So that's why I say so-called comet, because a normal comet does not become that bright at all, and does not become that bright that far out. So first is the brightness. Then there is the retrograde orbit. Then there is the appearance from Sagittarius, and then there is this orbit of estimated 3,500 years, which is pretty close to the 3,600 of Nibiru.
Sure is.
So I did get many calls out from friends and others who said, is it Nibiru, is it Nibiru? Because they and I too would of course want to see Nibiru back in our own time. And I don't think it's Nibiru, because Nibiru, according to all the sources, including current astronomers who call it Planet X and have been searching for it, and I deal with that too in my writings, is at least 3 to 4 times the size of Earth. And Hale-Bopp is at least, as you mentioned, 100 miles across. At some point, the estimates went much higher. If it is 1,000 miles, as I did hear too from my sources, then it is already not a comet. It's a small planet. It comes to almost match the size of some of our smaller planets, certainly some of the moons that are planetary size of Jupiter and Saturn.
Yes,
so it's not Nibiru, but in my opinion, it is a harbinger of Nibiru.
A harbinger of. Can I come back now to the question, or do you not wish to answer it?
No, go ahead.
If Nibiru should return, what would be the effect on our Earth?
I mean, when I say we, I, let me speak for myself. I don't know. The one time when it returned, it brought about the deluge, the great flood, that again is mentioned and described in the Bible, but as other chapters at the beginning of Genesis, the biblical description is just a condensed narrative of much more extensive and much more detailed Sumerian and Babylonian text. So once it caused the catastrophe that is recorded worldwide as the deluge, the biblical prophecies, the Old Testament prophecies about the day of the Lord and etc., speak of earthquakes and other effects on Earth. But that, of course, depends where Earth is in its orbit around the Sun, and where Mars and Jupiter are. When Nibiru is it's what is called perihelion, meaning
yes,
the closest path nearest the Sun. So if the other two major planets between us and Nibiru, if we are on Nibiru side of the Sun and not on the opposite Sun, so it is very difficult to predict what would happen.
All right. I would like to ask you about this. Worldwide now, I've had many prophets on my program. Gordon Michael Scallion is a very good friend of mine. And he has predicted accurately, I'm sorry to say, the activation of the Ring of Fire. There are volcanoes reported every day now, new volcanoes, Etna, Vesuvius, both in danger of erupting, evacuation orders, volcanoes down in Central America, earthquakes all around the Ring of Fire. What's going on, Zecharia?
Ask your prophet. I'm not a prophet, you know. I'm sometimes asked what, in one word, what would I call myself? Am I a biblical scholar? Am I a linguist? Am I a historian?
Yes.
Am I an archaeologist? And I'm a little or a lot of all of that. But I describe myself, or prefer to describe myself as a reporter, because due to my abilities or talents, I'm one of of a handful of people who can read the Sumerian tablets. So due to what I devoted my lifetime to, I'm able to report to people today what the ancient peoples knew and witnessed. And what they knew was amazing because they knew about the complete makeup of our solar system, which is more than we knew about 100 or 150 years ago. They knew of and described Pluto, which we had discovered 65 years ago, that's all. So they knew that their mathematics was incredible. Some tablets deal with mathematical calculations to the eighth degree, and so on and so on. I mean, the Sumerian civilization is amazing. And if you ask them, how could they know that? I mean, how would you know that without telescopes and microscopes?
Yeah.
They said, all that we know was taught to us by the Anunnaki. Now that word in Sumerian literally means those who from heaven to earth came. So the essence out of what I'm reporting is not just that there is one more planet in our own solar system, because if that would be all, then we would not be excited, or it wouldn't be more important than the discovery of Pluto 65 years ago.
What you are reporting is that there are or were others.
That is it. What I'm telling people is that all the ancient evidence shows that we are not alone in our own solar system. In other words, the search for so-called intelligent life should not be conducted out there, 5 and 6 and 10 light years away from us, where even if it exists, the communication or contact would be impossible, or not a practical reality. But there are others like us on a planet which is a member of our own solar system that comes to our vicinity every 3,600 years, and it is then that there were comings and goings between their planet and our planet, going back to at least about 450,000 years ago. So this is what we are talking about, and not just about one more planet.
So you are convinced, based on Sumerian translation, that all of this, that this ancient civilization that had this science absolutely did exist, and you are convinced of this beyond any shadow of a doubt?
That's exactly what I'm convinced of, and I hope that those who read my 6 books to date, and as you mentioned, one more is coming next month, titled Divine Encounters, I think the evidence is overwhelming.
So do I, Doctor. Stand by just one moment. We'll come right back to you. It is now the bottom of the hour. My guest is Zecharia Sitchin. When we return, we're going to ask him a little bit about the nature of time. He wrote a book called When Time Began. I believe we just looked 70 light years out into space, and we have photographs of the birthing of stars. We will ask Zecharia about that next. This is CBC. We only have Dr. Sitchin for the remainder of the hour, so I'm probably going to hog most of the time. He promises, though, to come back at another time and spend more time with us. And that is the subject for the moment, time. You wrote a book, Doctor, called When Time Began.
Yes, I did.
We just got... have you seen the photographs taken by Hubble? I'm sure you have.
I saw them, and they are incredible.
Incredible is correct. Doctor, how did we begin? When did time... Is there a beginning to time and an end?
I don't think so. I don't think so in universal terms. There is, of course, a universal time, dealing with the whole universe, which we are now only beginning to see in ever-growing detail. And those photographs by the Hubble Space Telescope are really amazing. So there's this great universe, the theories about its beginning are mostly focused on the idea of the Big Bang, that everything was some small ball that exploded.
Do you subscribe to that?
Based on what I read, because I'm not a astrophysicist, but based on what I read, it does make sense. The question is, of course, what made that nucleus explode, and thus bring about our present day universe. And some of the mysteries in the universe are that the earlier discoveries this year show that some components of our universe are older than the universe. So where did they come from? So this really leads us to, not to astrophysics, but to philosophy.
Yes.
And to the concept of God. And again, this is the subject I deal with in my new book, Divine Encounters. God. As a matter of fact, if those, and I know that you and your lovely wife have read my books from the very first one, The 12th Planet, you may recall that I end that book with the question if the Anunnaki who came to Earth from Nibiru created, in quotation marks, created us through genetic intervention in the process of evolution, if they created us on Earth, us meaning Homo sapiens, who created them on their planet?
Yes.
I'm asked many times if those visitors to Earth were considered by the ancient peoples as gods with a small g. Did they have a religion? Did they have gods? So these discoveries in space, these discoveries of the universe, really lead us, or should lead us, in my opinion, into looking at where we are in the heavens, where we are in the chain of life, not from a chauvinistic point of view. For example, I'm asked many times, how could others like us, similar to us, live on a planet that goes out into space, Nibiru, goes out into space where it's so extremely cold and everything is frozen, and then comes near us, and etc. How could life exist there? So my counter question is sometimes I wonder what the people from Nibiru thought about us, or earlier more primitive hominids, when they came here 450,000 years ago. Did they wonder how could life evolve on a planet so close to the sun? So the whole notion that life, intelligent life, can exist only on a planet our size with precisely our chemical components of oxygen and nitrogen, etc., and only at the distance from the sun of about 94 million miles that Earth is, that only here, and not in the immense universe with its diversity of galaxies and stars, and each star has planets, or most stars have planets. So we have to stop thinking in terms of those, what I call chauvinistic terms.
Egotistical, really.
Yeah, because we are really an insignificant, Earth is an insignificant speck of dust in universal terms. And therefore, when we ask each other, when people ask me, do you believe in God? I mean, first you have to define God. But in universal terms, of course I believe. I believe that as the Sumerians believed, and in a way I'm a descendant of the Sumerians, because Abraham was a Sumerian who migrated to Canaan, and I'm one of his descendants.
However, you do believe that our creators, I'll just use that word, may be God with a small g?
Well, those who used genetic engineering, and again I'm relying on very detailed Sumerian text. I did not invent it. I mean, indeed, anything and everything in my books is based on ancient text, writings, and pictorial evidence. The only difference between me and other scholars in this field is that they treat all those texts as mythology, and I said to myself, what if this is true? What if all this really happened? And thus the books that have the overall title, The Earth Chronicles. So they came here, they found early hominids, let's call them ape-man, ape-woman. I don't want to use the scientific technical terminology of that is confusing and keeps changing, by the way, with more discoveries. So they found us, they needed workers, they needed manpower. They jumped the gun on evolution and mixing the genes of one of their males with the egg of, let's call her an ape woman, an Eve. By the way, that there was an Eve about the time that I said in my very first book, some 270,000 years ago, was confirmed. A few years ago, this year, it was confirmed through genetic studies that there was an Adam, also one single male ancestor, about 2,700, 2,070 100 years ago. So, I mean, anything that the Sumerians told us, that there are other solar systems, that planets can have more than one moon, that we have Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. Everything gets corroborated daily. For example, there were reports a few weeks ago about confirmation that another star, another sun, was definitely found out to have planets orbiting it. And the headline was "New discoveries challenge notion of Earth's uniqueness." And I asked, whose notion? Whose notion is being challenged? Not of the Sumerians. Their notions are being confirmed. So the whole thing really is mind-boggling.
It is the modern notions that are being challenged, of course.
It's the modern notion. Indeed, the subtitle of my book, Genesis Revisited, is Modern Science Catching Up with Ancient Knowledge? And of course, it is.
All right, this is a philosophical question, but if the ancients that you talk of were to now revisit their creation, our Earth, and look at us, do you think, Doctor, they would consider us to be a success or just an experiment gone wrong?
Well, that is a very, usually the one being questioned says it's a very good question if he doesn't intend to answer it. But it's not just a good question, it's a very serious question, and I think it really goes to the core of the issue, because to each one of us who is born and eventually goes through life till the end of our days, and struggles and raises a family and pays taxes and looks at the heavens and wonder what's next. Will there be wars? Will there be calamities? Will there be more? Will Earth will be hit by some of those comets? Will there be more earthquakes, etc.? The question you ask really goes to the core of it, because once they are back, and I believe that their emissaries are already back, and this explains the UFO sightings, etc.
You keep answering questions I'm about to ask. I wanted to ask you about that. You believe then this UFO phenomenon is real and represents some sort of monitoring of us?
Well, what exactly it represents, I cannot say, because I was not abducted, and nobody stuck a needle in my belly button, and I'm just taking the word of those who say. I'm accepting at least part of the TV evidence that we see of those flying objects, etc. So something is going on, whether it's exactly the way those who claim to have seen or been abducted say it or not, but somebody is back, and I must make it clear in the few minutes we have that these are not yet the Anunnaki, but these are their emissaries, because as I show in my books, such beings with that kind of heads, with the big eyes, with the peculiar non-human-like skins, etc., and with unclear sexual identification, male or female, etc., were seen and were depicted, and I showed the pictures of those depictions in my book. So the emissaries are back.
All right, you have seen the photographs, Doctor, haven't you, of the dissection of the supposed alien at Zecharia or Roswell, whichever it was?
I saw what was broadcast, yeah.
And what were your impressions of that?
I still have to be convinced.
They were interesting creatures. I am also not convinced but I have yet to...
I would like to be convinced, but I'm yet to be convinced.
Mm-hmm. There is more and more and more of this kind of thing coming to us. Are we being conditioned for what is to come?
Well, what I believe is that somebody is scouting us, and this happened the first time that they came here. First, they sent their scouts or their robots. By the way, these are robots. These are not the
biological.
These are androids. Let's call them. Okay. So what would happen when the Anunnaki themselves come back? That was your question. And,
yes, sir. Yes.
I'm not trying to evade it. The answer is not clear even to me, because the most described instance of one of the most recent, not the last recent, but one of the recent and the most described, both in the Bible and the Sumerian text, is the time of the deluge, the great flood.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the Sumerian text, the Bible condensed the two personalities, the two leaders, one of whom was called Enlil, meaning Lord of the Command, and one was Enki, meaning Lord of Earth. Enki was the one involved in the genetic manipulation that led to us Homo sapiens being created on Earth. And Enlil was the stricter one, the one that wanted everything to go by the law and not to digress, etc. So the complaints of Enlil, who instigated the notion of not telling mankind that the deluge is coming, so that mankind would be wiped off the face of the earth, and Enki connived with his faithful servant and worshipper, whom the Bible calls Noah, connived to save Noah and his family and some of the friends, etc. So there were two of them, or whose descendants now lead the Anunnaki, I don't know. The complaint of Enlil, which he used to justify his suggestion, let us not tell mankind about the coming catastrophe and let mankind be destroyed, were twofold. One, which the Bible stresses, that there was evil, men became evil. And in the Sumerian text it says that Enlil complained about the proliferation of mankind, that too many of them.
Yes.
Now, I definitely believe that two factors that would be taken into consideration, whether to give us more knowledge and technology, which was done in the past every 3,600 years, the transition from Old Stone Age to Mesolithic, Neolithic, Sumerian civilization, it's always at 3,600-year intervals. The decision whether to continue that or whether to look to our demise again as at the time of the deluge would depend on these two issues. Mankind's evil, and we have seen plenty of it during World War II and the Holocaust, and many repeats of those phenomena, like now in the former Yugoslavia, and what's happening in Africa, which doesn't get enough publicity, but the slaughter there is incredible.
Yes.
Of tribe against tribe, etc. So the evil is obvious. But the other thing, which is really up to us, but we are not doing anything about it, is the explosion of population, overpopulation. So I think that these are two things that we really ought to focus on and try to change the course of mankind before the day which the Bible called the day of the Lord, or the second coming of the kingdom of heaven to earth. Before that really takes place, we ought to change our ways.
All right, Dr. Sitchin, I want to ask you this. In an old movie called The High and Mighty, in the old days when that airplane's going across the Pacific, there came a point around mid-Pacific where they only had enough fuel to go forward to wherever they were going. They could not go back. A little red light would come on in the cockpit and say, point of no return.
That's correct.
And has humanity's little red light come on?
Yeah, I'm not a prophet. Again, I want to say I'm a reporter. But we were definitely, whether the red light went on or is about to go on, we are more or less at that point.
So we're very close or there.
Yeah.
All right, one more question. In your book, The 12th Planet, you addressed roughly the same subject as was addressed in Chariots of the Gods. Somebody wants to know, with regard to the ancient astronauts, how much did, if at all, Chariots influence your writing?
Well, it influenced me to the point that after spending almost 30 years researching my subject, which the research started when I was a schoolboy, I thought to myself, well, here somebody comes and explains it in his way what happened, and then talks about ancient astronauts, etc. So what's the point in my writing, in my book? And that was almost my decision not to write my book. But then I decided that there's really no point in all these books, including the book that you mentioned, just to speculate, like say, look at the pyramids of Giza now, who could have built them? All these millions of stone blocks, etc., etc. And when you, the reader or the listener, shrugs the shoulders and says, I don't know, you say, well, only somebody from somewhere else could do it, an extraterrestrial, an ancient astronaut. Now, I felt that to be serious, and I'm a serious researcher, and nobody challenged my facts, some disagree with my conclusions or my understanding of the ancient text, but nobody says there's no such text. I think that unless you say, if Earth was visited, number one, by whom? Not just to say ancient astronauts. By whom?
Yes.
Second, from where? From where? You can't say, well, the universe must be populated by others light years away. No, from where? It has to be technically feasible. And thirdly, to say when. I mean, you can't say, in ancient times, thousands of years ago. You have to be specific.
All right, doctors.
And finally, why? Why would anybody keep coming and visiting our planet unless there was a reason for it? And I answer all these questions in my very first book.
And you
why,
also,
when, from where, by whom?
Yes, and you will also answer them, I take it, and take questions. You're going to be, we've got to go, we're out of time, but you're going to be at Las Vegas Cashman Field Center Saturday, November 18th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Whole Life Expo, correct?
Thank you for mentioning it.
All right, and I will also give the number so people can pre-register. It's 1-800-332-0099. That's 1-800-332-0099. And we did not have enough time, Dr. Sitchin, so you promise to come back?
And we'll deal with the issue of time.
The issue of time. Dr. Sitchin, it has been a great honor to have you on the program, and I look forward to your coming back.
Thank you very much.
Take care, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Zecharia Sitchin. And we got, fortunately, we were able to cover a lot of things that I wanted to cover, not nearly as much as I wanted to cover, but many of the current events that I'm sure you wanted answers from Dr. Sitchin about. So there you've got it. Again, he's going to be in Las Vegas on Saturday, November 18th, and the pre-register number is 1-800-332-0099. In some markets, it's Arrivederci. For the rest of you, we'll be right back.